North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, truthfully, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not news. That's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours, which leads us to debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. Join us. If you want to debate, it's very easy to do. You can go to our chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can do that even as we speak. It would be great to have you here. You can also call me on the telephone at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We start the broadcast with Texas news. Texas shoppers, check your freezers. That's because Tyson Foods is recalling nearly 94,000 pounds of ground beef because it may be contaminated with foreign matter. They're talking about in specifics, they're talking about a hard mirror-like material in the ground beef. The recall involves ground beef produced November 2nd at the Tyson Foods facilities in Amarillo, Texas. This is according to the Department of Agriculture's Food and Safety Inspection Service. Products include 5-pound and 10-pound packages of Hill Country Fare, 73% lean, 27% fat ground beef, and 5-pound packages of HEB, 80% lean, and 20% fat ground chuck. The products were sent to retailers in Texas, specifically HEB, Joe V's, Mi Tienda, and Central Market stores. Tyson Foods self-notified the USDA it had received consumer complaints about finding mirror-like material in ground beef products purchased from grocery stores. As of today, there have been no reports of injury because of the products impacted by the recall, according to the company. So once again, if you bought some Tyson Foods hamburger, you may have bought some of the 94,000 pounds of ground beef being recalled as we speak. And you can find, if you shopped at HEB, Joe V's, Mi Tienda, and Central Market stores, you may indeed be affected. Thought you'd like to know. It was an historic day today in that perhaps, I believe she is the longest serving Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi said she was not going to seek another leadership position in the House of Representatives. And great. And so that didn't happen before, but it's apparently happening now because when I tried this before, it didn't have a commercial in it. And now it has a commercial in it. And so there you go. All right, hang on just a couple. You see, I did try to fix this. I honestly did try to fix it. I swear to heavens that I did. Let's try this one more time. Nancy Pelosi saying adieu.
To the floor at 6 years old. Never would I have thought that someday I would go from homemaker to House Speaker. In fact, I never... In fact, I never intended to run for public office. Mommy and Daddy taught us through their example that public service is a noble calling and that we all have a responsibility to help others. In our family, my brother Tommy then became mayor of Baltimore also. But it's been my privilege to play a part in forging extraordinary progress for the American people. I have enjoyed working with 3 presidents, achieving historic investments in clean energy with President George Bush. Transformative healthcare reform with President Barack Obama. And forging the future from infrastructure to healthcare to climate action with President Joe Biden. Now we must move boldly into the future, grounded by the principles that have propelled us this far and open to fresh possibilities for the future. Scripture teaches us that for everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. My friends, no matter what title you all, my colleagues, have bestowed upon me, speaker, leader, whip, there is no greater official honor for me than to stand on this floor and to speak for the people of San Francisco. This I will continue to do as a member of the House, speaking for the people of San Francisco, serving the great state of California, and defending our Constitution. And with great confidence in our caucus, I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. For me, the hours come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect. And I'm grateful that so many are ready and willing to shoulder this awesome responsibility. Madam Speaker, standing here today, I'm endlessly grateful for all of life's blessings, for my Democratic colleagues whose courage and commitment with the support of your families have made many of these accomplishments possible. In fact, could not have been done without you. For my dear husband, Paul, who has been my beloved partner in life and my pillar of support, thank you. We're all grateful for all the prayers and well wishes as he continues his recovery. Thank you so much. For our darling children, Nancy, Corinne, Christine, Jacqueline, Paul, and Alexandra, and our grandchildren, Alexander and Madeline, Liam, Sean, and Ryan, Paul and Thomas, Bella and Octavio, they are the joys of our lives for whom and we are so very, very proud of them and a comfort to us at this time. And for my brilliant, dedicated, and patriotic staff, under the leadership of Terry McCullough, working together, the finest group of public servants the House has ever known. Thank you all so much. And again, for those who sent me here, for the people of San Francisco, for entrusting me with the high honor of being their voice in Congress. In this continued work, I will strive to honor the call of the patron saint of our city, St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. In this house, we begin each day with a prayer and a pledge to the flag. And every day, I am in awe of the majestic miracle that is American democracy. As we participate in a hallmark of our republic, the peaceful, orderly transition from one Congress to the next, let us consider the words of, again, President Lincoln, spoken during one of America's darkest hours. He called upon us to come together, to swell the chorus of the Union, when once again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. That again is the task at hand. A new day is dawning on the horizon, and I look forward, always forward, to the unfolding story of our nation, a story of light and love, of patriotism and progress, of many becoming one. and always an unfinished mission to make the dreams of today the reality of tomorrow. Thank you all. May God bless you and your families, and may God continue to bless our veterans and the United States of America. Thank you all so much.
The soon-to-be former Speaker of the House of Representatives bidding adieu to the chamber, at least in the near future, as she says she will not participate in Democrat leadership. With that, she takes Steny Hoyer, who also announced his retirement from Democrat Party leadership in the House. She served for 20 years, and further, she also was someone who has essentially been in leadership for some of the most amazing spending of the United States government. She was there and in some cases participated in leadership as trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars were added to our national debt, now somewhere in the vicinity of $31.8 trillion. She's probably responsible, or at least was on the scene for some 20 trillion of that. She did point out that she had worked with presidents, and we'll get to one that she left out. She said she was pleased to work with 3 presidents. She served under 4. More about that in just a moment. With great confidence in our caucus, I will not seek re-election to the Democrat leadership of the next Congress. For me, the hour has come for a new generation to lead the Democrat caucus that I so deeply respect. And I'm grateful that so many are ready and willing to shoulder that awesome responsibility. Hakeem Jeffries is her Democrat leader apparent. He appears to be in a situation where he will run unopposed. There is no greater honor for me than to stand on this floor and speak for the people of San Francisco. This I will continue to do as a member of the House, speaking for the people of San Francisco, serving the great state of California, and defending our Constitution. The 84-year-old Californian made the announcement today on the House floor. Speculation had grown in recent days about Nancy Pelosi's future after her husband, Paul, was violently attacked at her new San Francisco home, or at their San Francisco home, and Democrats lost control of the House of Representatives in the midterms. This, by the way, was the second time that Nancy Pelosi had overseen the loss of the leadership of the House of Representatives. Since Pelosi has led House Democrats since 2003, including 2 4-year stints as Speaker of the House. Although she's poised to continue serving the House for at least the short term, the California lawmaker's decision has widespread repercussions for her conference. We'll talk more about that as we continue. Nancy Pelosi says that she is finished with Democrat leadership in the House of Representatives. What are your thoughts? Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Do you have something you'd like to share on the chat? You certainly are welcome to do so. Go to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're watching on Patreon or Rumble, this was recorded earlier today. Send me an email, The Wells Report. Please put your platform in the subject line, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I possibly can, I promise. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi stepping aside. What will be next? Hakeem Jeffries very likely will be the new Democrat leader. What about the rest of the leadership positions? Time will tell. This is The Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks for joining us today. We are going over what is left after Nancy Pelosi has decided not to continue in her role in any leadership position with the Democrat Party in the House of Representatives. She will become the former Speaker of the House on January 3rd when Republicans take control of the chamber. She will, as she says at this particular moment, she says she will continue serving the people of San Francisco. She was just reelected to her House seat. But many people believe that an ambassadorship someplace nice, like perhaps Japan, will be next for Nancy Pelosi after some of the dust settles following the change in leadership. It is the Wells Report. Speaking of leadership in the House of Representatives, while she has decided to stick around for at least the short term, current members of the Democrat leadership, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer of Maryland and House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, very likely will step down as well. We've heard that Steny Hoyer will. Jim Clyburn may not. Both of those men are in their 80s. This would be a good time to go ahead and break that string. Pelosi's most likely successor appears to be House Democrat Conference Chairman Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Jeffries, first elected to Congress in 2012, is an astute fundraiser, already has the backing of the Congressional Black Caucus. Another potential contender is House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff of California. Schiff has been laying the groundwork for a bid for months, but is also possibly eyeing a Senate run in his native California if Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein retires in 2024, which she will likely do. Hoyer announced shortly after Pelosi's speech he will not remain in Democrat leadership, paving the way for another to take the top spot. That possibly could be Adam Schiff. What was notable in all of this is Nancy Pelosi has refused to endorse her successor in Democrat leadership. So maybe the idea of essentially wrangling two impeachments and indeed several other things, Adam Schiff is in a position where maybe his utility has been served for Nancy Pelosi, and he will now not receive her endorsement. Fascinating. That is fascinating to me. It tells you a little bit about the sociopathic tendencies of people in power. I would, if I was advising Adam Schiff to run for the Senate when Dianne Feinstein retires, but I pray he does not win. That being said, we can move on to other things. What did you see and hear in that speech? What did I see and hear? I saw Nancy Pelosi obviously overcome with emotion when she talked about her husband, Paul, and that was a good thing. Someone on the chat room said, my goodness, she almost appears human. Yes, well, you'll have this. Also, the other things I heard were her talking about the rule of law and her defense of the Constitution. I'm sorry, I have not seen much of either of those. It seems as though politics trumps law and the Constitution in the eyes and mind of Nancy Pelosi, and she has certainly comported herself that way. Perhaps that is the case. All I can say is that of the things that I will be thankful for coming up on Thanksgiving, one of them will be that Nancy Pelosi is finally stepping down. I was finished with Nancy Pelosi when she tore up President Trump's speech. She said she enjoyed working with 3 presidents. She worked with 4, but didn't enjoy it, apparently. And that mean-spirited and nasty, vile tearing of the State of the Union speech finished Nancy Pelosi in my mind from a standpoint of taking her seriously moving forward. Not that that matters, of course, but I thought I'd lay it out there because, once again, I'm really anti-Americans. In other words, if you're not someone who believes in the Constitution and the rule of law, and Nancy Pelosi has at least shown that she most certainly does not, I have very little use for you. And I hope she enjoys the rest of her life in peace. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Please join us. By the way, if you think this show has value, please share it with your friends. You can do that right now if you'd like. I would certainly appreciate it. Also, give us a thumbs up or a like or whatever that is. Those go a long way, and I sincerely appreciate it. So do the subscriptions. If you can help us out, that'd be fantastic. If you want to help us out financially, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. patreon.com/The Wells Report. Toss me $1 a month. That would be awesome. If you could do that, I sure would appreciate it. And I thank all those people who have done that very thing. It's awfully nice. Some of the people in the chat room reacting to Nancy Pelosi's soon-to-be retirement. Yvonne says, I don't think the correct saint is guiding her. That's what she says. Let's see. Mike says, Saint Stoli, the patron saint of vodka. Yeah, okay. Lee Zimmerman, succinct, concise, as always. Bye-bye now. He says, bye. Let's see. Lee also points out that he doesn't believe that Nancy Pelosi is a Christian. Let's see what else. Free wine in the gallery. Her speaking glass of water is Smirnoff 100. America loves Smirnoff. What a country. Yeah. She's never worked for the citizens. She's always worked on her agenda, says Max. And first of all, great to see you again, Chief. The other thing about that is that Nancy Pelosi is one of the people that caused me to develop the idea of political sociopathy or sociopathy. These people only know what they know. They only want what they want, and they move forward in that manner. And I happen to believe that Nancy Pelosi is certainly one of those, if not the poster child for that very idea. That's just my opinion. But I thought I'd put that out there. And Yvonne says, aren't we glad to be finished with her as well? Yeah, that's possible. One more piece of the swamp that leaves. Well, they leave eventually. And I'm glad that she's gone, frankly. Lois feels the same way. She's delighted she's not leader. Wish she would go home. Yvonne says, we can surely get the number of us watching the show live a lot higher than it is now. Yes, we can. Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. Let's see what else. Let's see. FJB ruined my Keystone price. Yeah, that's possible. Let's see. Schaefer back in the day. Now she has to sit with the common representatives. Yes, she does, but I don't expect her to do that for long. I believe that President Biden will nominate her as the next ambassador to Japan, which is something that was brought up a little bit ago. Let's see what else. Pelosi will continue to pull six figures off the taxpayer for life. Correct. Let's see. Watch a member of the squad get into leadership. Not likely based on what I'm about to report to you. You might find a little bit more solace in that. Let's see. It's scary, but I don't want to consider the Democrats getting any worse. We certainly don't need that shrew up there. AOC in leadership would, I think, be not necessarily one of the death knells for the Democrat Party, but it'd be awfully close. They've got to get away from socialism as quickly as possible. Let's see. By the way, Beth Ann is showing her ESP capabilities. The Republicans had a very serious press conference today, which we will play in its entirety next hour. They made some stark accusations today, and they plan on embarking on several investigations, and I'll bring you all up to date on that. Let's see. Jess says, I'm sorry, I came in when Nancy was on and didn't even say hi. So, hi, y'all. Hi, Jesse. How's it going? I had heard ambassador of Italy, but whatevs. That's possible, too. Let's see how she can take care of her district. I'm glad you brought that up, Randy, because San Francisco is a mess. San Francisco has always been one of the most beautiful cities in the world, but it is now a haven for just plain despair. The leadership of all of that city has really brought it to its knees, and I'm looking forward to something changing there. That's a beautiful, beautiful city. It's one of the only reasons I would ever go back to San Francisco or ever go back to California, and not for any length of time, just to hang around in the city. But right now, pass. Not interested. John says, JD, I agree with your opinion of putting AOC in leadership. Yeah, that would be exquisitely damaging to the Democrat Party. I don't think it would be something that they would even consider. Any Democrat abroad is an embarrassment to the United States. Yes, but that's one of those things that's a political cookie that are given to people at the end of their political careers. Let's talk a little bit about some of the dissension within the Democrat ranks. And I think you'll probably find this one heartening. I know I did. House Democrats suffered defeat in the 2020 midterm elections, reports Fox News. In January, after 2 years of having unified control of the House and Senate, the party will pass control of the House of Representatives back to Republicans. With the party's loss, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has served in Congress since 1987, will hand over the Speaker's gavel. Current House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy won the Republican designation for House Speaker yesterday. Day before yesterday. Actually, he was elected Republican leader. That may continue to be House Speaker. It's very likely it will, but just to be precise. Now, one day after it was projected that the GOP would take control of the House, Americans are pondering how the party lost control after months of preparation and preaching about issues they believed fared best with voters. Multiple factors contributed to the unsuccessful attempt by Democrats to retain control of the House. Insiders from across the political spectrum conclude that messaging and economics contributed to the party's loss. Jessica Tarlov, a Democrat strategist who serves as head of the research for Bustle, suggested Democrats lost the House by an historically small margin because of tough economic conditions and the general pattern of history. There was unexpectedly opportunity for Democrats to hold the House if there was a much more cohesive economic message and a stronger position on crime and policing, which would have helped hold on to the congressional seats in New York, said Tarlov, who currently serves as a Fox News contributor. But overall, it was a tremendous performance that will be cited for decades to come. Well, it depends on your point of view. In the wake of the Democrat failure to maintain the control of the House, Chris Taylor, a spokesperson for the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, said the party defied history in the elections. Mike Berg, a spokesperson for the National Republican Congressional Committee, told Fox that voters held House Democrats accountable in the midterms because the party passed an agenda that caused higher prices, rising crime, and an open southern border. In the House, Republicans flipped numerous seats that were held by Democrats. Notable victories included Republican Jen Kagan's defeat of Democrat Representative Elaine Luria, a member of the House January 6th committee, another one losing their job strangely enough, I believe, in Virginia, as well as Lori Chavez de Remer's win over Democrat challenger Jamie McLeod Skinner, who represents Oregon's 5th district. Think about that for just a couple of seconds. A lot of people said that Republicans underperformed in the election, but look at the seats they flipped. In New York, a state largely that votes for Democrats and mostly favors left-leaning policies, Republicans flipped 4 House seats. In remarks offered to Fox, Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel said the party's win was a result of GOP's message of prosperity, security, and opportunity. Aaron Perrine, who is the vice president of TAG Strategies, told Fox News the GOP came out on top in House elections because of a clear contrast of message against Democrats for being weak on crime, tanking the economy, solutions to those problems, and a ground game to get the voters out. Similarly, Kevin Seifert, who served as chief of staff to former GOP House Speaker Paul Ryan, insisted Democrats failed to capture a majority in the House because Republicans recruited dynamic candidates in competitive races, successfully told voters who they were and what they stood for, and intelligently explained the economic problems caused by Democrat tax and spend policies. So there was also something else. There are an awful lot of people that are in the Democrat Party that are extremely upset about socialist bends in the Democrat Party. These are Democrats that are speaking out on this particular topic. They are unhappy with the fact that Democrats have ceased being Americans and become socialists. And many of them have. The aforementioned AOC and the Squad, for example. I'm very, very sure that if the Democrat Party does not clean that up, they will not progress. They will continue to lose, and they should. Socialism is a virus, in my humble opinion. It is a virus that infects various parties at various times, but this time it's the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party, in an effort to placate the left, lost many of those seats because of Green New Deal policies. The idea that someone would come up with a brand new economy and then force people to comport to it makes absolutely zero sense in any fashion, but certainly not politically. You can't destroy one economy before you have another one working. And in point of fact, green policy ideas go nowhere until we find more electricity for this country to use. More electricity at this point means using what are called fossil fuels. They're not. They're natural fuels given to us by Mother Earth. And until we are in a position where we can develop room temperature superconductors so that we can transmit electricity much more efficiently, until we suddenly realize that in order to have an electric future in this nation, we're going to have nuclear we're going to have nuclear power to generate electricity. We're simply going to have to do that. And all of these things have been turned aside by that same leftist agenda that once again demanded a whole new economy based on windmills, 14th century technology, and the idea that the sun can provide all the energy we need. The sun simply cannot, at least until we're able to we're able to transmit electricity in a way that is, what we do is archaic. We're still sending electricity via wires, via materials, copper, aluminum, and so on and so on. And these things, this is just a no-go. Further, battery technology has got to improve. We have to have a way of storing that electricity in ways that are less toxic, less expensive, less heavy. We have to figure out ways of doing all of these things. And before you can have this supposed green new economy, this refusal to use the copious amounts of energy available to the United States in coal, natural gas, and oil, none of that is real. None of it is real. Further, the Democrat Party suffers from an inability to be able to balance their politics with reality. The simple case of the matter is that human beings, if given an opportunity to lay around all day and have somebody bring them food and money, they will take that opportunity. If they're in a situation where they have to earn a living to be able to feed themselves, clothe themselves, keep themselves warm or cool, then they will do that as well. And the idea, and this is something that we touched on regarding San Francisco, the idea of, say, guaranteed income by Andrew Yang and so on will destroy the work ethic of the United States of America. It's just not something that it's not sustainable. It is not real. It is a fantasy, something that I call Democrat delirium. And indeed, if they continue to pursue that, you may not see Democrats in leadership in this nation for quite a long time. Now, as I said, Mike Renwee says, well, what's left of the work ethic? Well, when it comes to that, what we also have to look at COVID-19. We have to look at COVID-19 and how that impacted the American workforce. Once again, people stayed home and started doing their jobs at home, which gave lie to the idea that you have to go spend hours and hours and hours in traffic to get to a building to do your work that you can do simply at home, even in some cases more productively and better at home with whatever computer capability you happen to have in that house. I am sitting here in my house doing this broadcast, doing my work, and have done so for a number of years at this point. And I'm not the only one. Think about what you do at work. Could you do it at home? Most certainly you could in most cases. Let's see. Gary says it would have been cool if they pursued hydrogen cell technology over electric vehicle technology. Well, fuel cells are wonderful. You're completely correct. The only problem with fuel cells is how do you fill the tank on your fuel cell powered car? You see, in order to do that, you have to use liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. That's a bad mix. It's just a very, very bad mix. It can kill you so many different ways, and it's also, in the case of liquid hydrogen, it's minus 400 degrees, and in liquid oxygen, minus somewhere around 250 degrees. It's not something that you can easily handle, and so fuel cells, while an excellent idea, I've always liked fuel cells. I think they're cool. Probably not. Besides, the exhaust from a fuel cell is water. I like that. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Join us on the chat room. We'd love to have you. Thanks very much. By the way, yesterday on the broadcast, I challenged a couple of Democrat friends of ours to name someone who could run for the presidency successfully in 2024. And I have to be perfectly honest with you, I did not get many answers, although Michelle Obama's name was brought up. I believe that Michelle Obama, even though she has said many, many times she has no interest in trying to run for office, she is someone that could give it one hell of a serious run. She absolutely would. Now, will she do it? Who knows? But who else will? Gavin Newsom has been bandied about. I don't think he's got a chance. Pete Buttigieg was mentioned. I don't think that anything we've seen from Pete Buttigieg takes him anywhere closer to the presidential track than he is right now. He is a guy who seems to be focused more on his personal life than the realities of his position as Secretary of Transportation. But that being said, we'll see. Now, there is someone else who pointed out that she might be interested. She has said several times that she's not interested in running for the presidency, but then again, maybe not. CNN is pushing for Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer to run for president in 2024. She won re-election by a double-digit margin in the deep blue state. Stopped by CNN Thursday morning to talk about her priorities in the next term. Michigan was one of 4 states where Democrats gained control of both legislative chambers and the governorship. Whitmer expressed hope for more gun control and more pro-choice legislation coming through Congress. On another note, you've been asked a lot in most basically every interview you've done recently about a 2024 run and running for president. You said you're not interested. This was CNN Caitlin Collins, CNN journalist Caitlin Collins, journalist. I guess my question is, if you're a supporter of yours and you're someone who doesn't live in Michigan but is national, wants to see you run, what is the argument for you not running for president? Earlier this week, she dismissed 2024 plans, telling a local news outlet she plans to serve as governor the next 4 years. Whitmer again shied away from the suggestion on CNN that she would run for president, but seemed to leave the possibility open by her word choice. You know, I literally 8 days ago got elected to a second 4-year term as governor of Michigan. This is the state I've always called home. I love the state. I'm so grateful to be the governor of the state of Michigan. I've got a big task ahead of me, and that's where I'm going to put 100% of my focus for now, she began. I do think it's flattering that people continue to ask, but I've got a big job that I was just hired to do for 4 more years. That's where I'm going to stay focused. Poppy Harlow then pointed out, well, we heard for now in that answer. As they chuckled, Whitmer admitted, I know everyone's going to parse that, but I'm staying right where I am. There's no mention of President Biden during the conversation, even as the president has repeatedly said he plans to pursue re-elections. Progressives recently signed a petition that's called Don't Run, Joe, begging the president not to run in 2024. Democrats in tight races across the country also distanced themselves from the unpopular president in the months leading up to the midterm elections. Now, remember, this is Fox News reporting this, so it's biased. You can say that he has low approval ratings, but to say he's unpopular, I think, is a stretch from a journalistic standpoint. You know, that analysis for bias and fact that I said I would point out, that's part of that, okay? This week, former President Trump announced he would run for the 2024 presidential election. He faces calls for new leadership from his own party as well. And so Gretchen Whitmer is certainly capable. She is someone who has been able to withstand some very serious criticism of her governance policies. And the next 4 years, or at least 2 years, I don't know exactly how long they work out on the Michigan Assembly and the Senate. All I can say is for the next 4 years, she pretty much has single party control of Michigan. And it will be interesting to see what they do. I know a lot of people that live in Michigan. They're not interested in more gun control, and that's one of the first things she brought up. And so there you go. Let's see. Maryland's governor is being mentioned. Smart military man, humble background. Let's see. Langston, I don't know who that guy is. Can you go ahead and do a quick research on the Maryland governor and give me his name? I sure would appreciate that because, you know, like it or don't, there will be a national conversation, which strangely, and this is something I've always been annoyed about, President Trump announced for the presidency yesterday, or day before yesterday, it was at night, yesterday's news cycle. And I think the presidential elections are long enough. Thank you very much. I really do. I'm not interested in listening to presidential politics for the next 2 years. I'm just not. And I really wish that we didn't have that. But I guess if you're in a situation like President Trump, you do what you do. As far as anybody else, I'm just not in a position where I believe that we need to be spending that much time. I do believe that this national conversation will be had, albeit lasting for 2 years. CNN is already talking about how they're planning to cover President Trump and not cover President Trump. Wes Moore. Okay, that's who Isaac pointed out yesterday. Wes Moore, Maryland governor. Okay. I'll put him in the list of possibles along with Gretchen Whitmer and Michelle Obama, even though Alan Schaefer in Arizona says, stop talking about Michelle Obama. She's not interested. Yeah, well, we'll see. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back with hour number 2 coming up in just a moment. Thanks very much, folks. Appreciate you being here. I'll have hour number 2 coming up, and we're going to do Republicans this time. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, truthfully, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias, and we point out both. Doesn't matter which direction it's coming from, bias in the news is bad. We make commentary. That's not news. That's just my opinion. And it's just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Earlier today, Republicans gathered and had a very serious press conference regarding various serious charges that do indeed implicate President Joe Biden. Before we get into this, I want to make something abundantly clear. I am not a big believer in Republicans, Democrats, politicians playing Perry Mason. I'm not a big believer in political enforcement of law. When it was happening to President Trump, I spoke out vociferously against it. In this particular case, I will speak out vociferously against it. I will add one caveat. The FBI, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, the NSA, the IRS, etc., all politicized. Law enforcement cannot be political. It cannot be. Law in the United States is blind. Law in the United States is equal. To not pursue that when you are involved in federal law enforcement leads to this kind of stuff. Now, Republicans had pointed out that they were going to investigate many, many things having to do with the first 2 years of the Biden administration. But I made it clear that when President Trump was not allowed to present his side during the January 6th committee, it turned into a lynch mob, and I have no interests in the ravings of lynch mobs. I have no interest in it. If that's what the Republicans do, I will have no interest in it. I believe that if you are going to play political law enforcement, you have to follow the rules of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and that means letting the other side have their say. Whether the Republicans do that or not is open for debate. All I can do is tell you that if indeed they choose not to allow the president to defend himself or members of his family or what have you, I will be strenuously critical of all of it because that's garbage. I wanted to make that plain right off the start because what I'm about to tell you is explosive. It's everywhere. I'm using the Fox News copy, so it's a little biased right. Republican Representatives James Comer and Jim Jordan alleged at a press conference today that President Biden was actively involved in overseas business dealings alongside his son Hunter. Comer, citing whistleblowers, asserted that the Biden family had, quote, flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Was Joe Biden directly involved with Hunter Biden's business deals? And is he compromised? That is our investigation, said Comer. Comer is the incoming chair of the House Oversight Committee. Jordan is expected to chair the Judiciary Committee. The representatives allege that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden participated in waste, fraud, and abuse in international business dealings. The Republicans issued a report outlining the findings. I'll find a way to put that up on Facebook or someplace so that you can see it. It is an exhaustive report. Republicans say they've uncovered evidence of conspiracy to defraud the United States, wire fraud, violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, money laundering, tax evasion, and other crimes. During the press conference, Comer said he believed Oversight Committee has lost much of its credibility in recent years, which he blamed on California Representative Adam Schiff. The committee promised today to update the press and public with concrete findings. Well, those are explosive charges, especially involving the government and the president of the United States. And so, what does that mean? Where will it go? I've told you what I will do and what I will not do. There will be an opportunity to face accusers. There will be an opportunity to defend themselves, or I will be wholeheartedly against this. Now, the political impeachments of President Trump were disturbing in a lot of different ways because none of them would withstand any kind of real law enforcement or judicial action. None of them. If indeed what the Republicans assert is true, influence buying, wire fraud, these are serious charges. These are very serious charges. Now, there's a guy named Terry Bobulinski. He's a guy that worked intimately with the Biden family. He made stark assertions when the Biden family attempted to compromise his security clearance standing with his jobs. He contacted them and said, you can't do this. You've got to refute this. They did not. He moved forward by showing all the information that apparently the Republicans have to the FBI. They did nothing with it. This was the press conference earlier. It's somewhat long, but I think it's absolutely necessary that you be able to see it. We're going to cover it here on the Wells Report in its entirety. And so these were Republicans today before the press making their assertions.
Here. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Today, we're going to provide you with something that you all aren't used to with respect to congressional investigations, and that's evidence. Committee Republicans have spoken with multiple whistleblowers from numerous schemes involving the Biden family, reviewed Hunter Biden's laptop, and received documents of previously unknown transactions. What we found are business plans aimed at targets around the world based on influence coverage, including with people closely tied to foreign governments like China, of the United States, where the Biden family swindled investors of hundreds of thousands of dollars, all with Joe Biden's participation. In 2019, shortly after announcing his campaign for president, Joe Biden told the American people he had nothing to do with and never had conversations with his family about their business dealings. That was a lie. Whistleblowers describe President Biden as chairman of the board for these businesses. He personally participated in meetings and phone calls. Documents show that he was a partner with access to an office. To be clear, Joe Biden is the big guy. This evidence raises troubling questions about whether President Biden is a national security risk.
Why not have it all?
Oh, goody. So sorry about that. Let's get back to the press conference.
Compromised by foreign governments. Despite the president's claim that he wasn't involved in Biden family business schemes, these photos show Joe Biden meeting with his family associates while vice president. Right there behind Paul. 4 different pictures. Committee Republicans have identified over 50 countries the Biden family sought businesses in. On the international side of the Biden family business, the deals were often led by Hunter Biden. And that map there behind Clay shows all the countries where the Bidens had a footprint in international business dealings. The investigation reveals a family that engaged with some of America's most powerful adversaries, planning to sell one of the largest sources of cobalt for electric vehicles in the world to the Chinese, for example. The Bidens flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Among the dozens of shell companies the Bidens set up, there were millions of dollars of wire transfers, flights on Air Force Two to conduct personal business, and meetings with heads of state, all while Joe Biden was aware of what was happening. All the while, he turned a blind eye. Many transactions related to these businesses have raised red flags at U.S. banks. A suspicious activity report, or SAR, is a document a bank must file with the Treasury Department when a transaction is suspected to be related to money laundering or fraud or other types of criminal activity. Accumulated over 150 SARs. One SAR generated by an American bank to the Treasury Department connects Hunter Biden and his business associates to international human trafficking, among other illegal activities. The money that was being made from foreign principals in the same room as Joe Biden was increasingly spent on furthering illegal activity. The SARS show that Hunter Biden was conducting business with suspected human traffickers. The money gained through influence peddling was funneled to a suspected criminal enterprise. Again, one linked to human trafficking. We have repeatedly called on the Biden Treasury Department to release additional financial documents to committee Republicans, but thus far Treasury has refused. We want to know what the Biden administration is trying to hide from the American people and why they are not being transparent. We also found evidence Hunter Biden sought to evade these SARS using his financial advisor, coincidentally a Clinton administration official. We will continue to pursue all evidence, and specifically the SARS and bank records in the new Congress. As part of our investigation, we have evidence that the finances, credit cards, and bank accounts of Hunter and Joe Biden were commingled, if not shared. And on some accounts, at least, red flags were raised by banks to the account owner or owners indicating suspicious or illegal activity. One of Hunter's closest associates, Eric Sherwin, was accessing Joe Biden's money and writing checks to reimburse Hunter. Sherwin arranged the Biden's international deals around the world. At the same time, he was a frequent visitor to the White House and Joe Biden during the Obama administration, visiting close to 30 times and sometimes with international business partners and Hunter, according to Hunter's calendar. Sherwin was also the president of Hunter's company and was appointed by President Obama to a position in the administration. After an apparent falling out with Sherwin, Hunter began coordinating business himself, and increasingly the deals brought in Joe Biden as a direct equity holder. One of these deals involves the sale of American natural gas to China. Evidence suggests Joe Biden had a 10% equity stake through his son. And behind Glenn and Andrew is a map from Hunter's laptop. This was a PowerPoint presentation on his laptop in Chinese that they used in working with the Chinese. Now, let's think about this for a second. At a time when Americans are suffering from high energy prices because of this administration's terrible energy policy, we find evidence that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were involved in a scheme to try to get China to buy liquefied natural gas, and from a whistleblower to try to get their foot in the door with China starting to purchase an interest in natural gas drillers. Now, people in the Dakotas, what about China starting to buy into our American energy industry at a time when we have an energy crisis because of the bad policies of the Biden administration? Now let that sink in. Hunter brought in millions of dollars from this deal from entities tied to the Chinese government. In emails obtained by committee Republicans, Hunter wanted keys made for Joe Biden and Jim Biden, his office mate.
And so what we see here is we see some very stark, serious allegations being made against Hunter Biden and the President of the United States. This happened earlier today. We are going to do our best to try to improve some of the actual presentation aspects of this. This particular video not synced and the audio is a little bit squirrely, so we'll try to figure out if I can get that done. Meanwhile, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. The difference between the political actions taken against President Trump and these are indeed crimes. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. As I said earlier this hour, there were explosive accusations made by the Republicans soon to be in power in the House of Representatives. These include serious, felonious crimes. And I have found a better piece of audio and video that I'm now going to share with you. This is from C-SPAN earlier today. It may be a little bit repetitive. Please accept my apologies. But this is important information that I believe you should know. And that's why we're playing this in its entirety. These are Republicans from earlier today discussing the Biden family and their plans for investigation of that family.
The Bidens flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Among the dozens of shell companies the Bidens set up, there were millions of dollars of wire transfers, flights on Air Force Two to conduct personal business, and meetings with heads of state, all while Joe Biden was aware of what was happening. All the while, he turned a blind eye. Many transactions related to these businesses have raised red flags at U.S. banks. A suspicious activity report, or SAR, is a document a bank must file with the Treasury Department when a transaction is suspected to be related to money laundering or fraud or other types of criminal activity. According to media reports, the Biden family accumulated over 150 SARs. One SAR generated by an American bank to the Treasury Department connects Hunter Biden and his business associates to international human trafficking, among other illegal activities. The money that was being made from foreign principals in the same room as Joe Biden was increasingly spent on furthering illegal activity. The SARs show that Hunter Biden was conducting business with suspected human traffickers. The money gained through influence peddling was funneled to a suspected criminal enterprise, again, one linked to human trafficking. We have repeatedly called on the Biden Treasury Department to release additional financial documents to committee Republicans, but thus far Treasury has refused. We want to know what the Biden administration is trying to hide from the American people and why they are not being transparent. We also found evidence Hunter Biden sought to evade these SARs using his financial advisor, coincidentally a Clinton administration official. We will continue to pursue all evidence, and specifically the SARs and bank records in the new Congress. As part of our investigation, we have evidence that the finances, credit cards, and bank accounts of Hunter and Joe Biden were commingled, if not shared. And on some accounts, at least, red flags were raised by banks to the account owner or owners indicating suspicious or illegal activity. One of Hunter's closest associates, Eric Sherwin, was accessing Joe Biden's money and writing checks to reimburse Hunter. Sherwin arranged the Biden's international deals around the world. At the same time, he was a frequent visitor to the White House, and Joe Biden during the Obama administration, visiting close to 30 times, and sometimes with international business partners and Hunter, according to Hunter's calendar. Sherwin was also the president of Hunter's company and was appointed by President Obama to a position in the administration. After an apparent falling out with Sherwin, Hunter began coordinating business himself, and increasingly the deals brought in Joe Biden as a direct equity holder. One of these deals involved the sale of American natural gas to China. Evidence suggests Joe Biden had a 10% equity stake through his son. And behind Glenn and Andrew is a map from Hunter's laptop. This was a PowerPoint presentation on his laptop in Chinese that they used in working with the Chinese. Now, let's think about this for a second. At a time when Americans are suffering from high energy prices because of this administration's terrible energy policy, we find evidence that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were involved in a scheme to try to get China to buy liquefied natural gas, and from a whistleblower to try to get their foot in the door with China starting to purchase an interest in natural gas drillers.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Again, I'm sorry for the repetition here. I tried to find a better video, and I found one from C-SPAN, and we'll continue to share this. A press conference earlier today. Questions were indeed asked by the press. We'll have that for you as well. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Republicans today, after retaining or gaining a 218-seat majority in the House of Representatives, and thus will take power January 3rd, came to the microphones and made explosive allegations against not just Hunter Biden, but the President of the United States. We are covering that press conference. It will spill over into next hour, but I think you need to see it. And if you are watching this hour, make sure you listen to the next hour and watch the next hour as well, because this will continue into that hour. Getting back to the press conference now, from Republicans in the House of Representatives vowing to investigate the president, his son, and many other things. This is the Wells Report. This continues. Now let's continue with the press conference.
And people are in outrage over China buying farmland in the Dakotas. What about China starting to buy into our American energy industry at a time when we have an energy crisis because of the bad policies of the Biden administration? Now let that sink in. Hunter brought in millions of dollars from this deal from entities tied to the Chinese government. In emails obtained by committee Republicans, Hunter wanted keys made for Joe Biden and Jim Biden, his office mate. He provided Joe Biden's personal cell number and called him his partner. The other partners in that deal were two people closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And that's the behind Andy and Jim. That's the email where Hunter sent to the landlord requesting keys, and the Chinese partners were on the email, and where he said, Joe would need a key, and he even put Joe's cell phone number on there. Domestically, Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, used the Biden name to enrich himself in return for the promise that when Joe Biden became president in 2020, business partners would get rich by having access to a future Biden administration. By promising access to financing through Middle Eastern, Russian, and Chinese connections he made through Joe Biden, and by bringing his brother, Joe Biden, onto phone calls, Jim Biden was able to convince companies to give him loans of hundreds of thousands of dollars that he never repaid. The Biden administration has answered none of our requests for information regarding the Biden family or the financial transactions they engaged in. Instead, the Biden administration has spent over $250,000 to staff to, quote, deflect Hunter stories. Protecting the president's son who has committed crimes with Americans' tax dollars is a waste. The domestic and international scheme that promised access to wealth in a future Biden administration constitute fraud. And the president's participation in enriching his family is, in a word, abuse of the highest order. Rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse will be the primary goal of a Republican House Oversight Committee. As such, this investigation will be a top priority. We are releasing a report today that details what we have uncovered. We are also sending letters to the Biden administration officials and Biden family associates renewing our request for voluntary production of documents relevant to this investigation. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the president of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. National security interests require the committee conduct investigation, and we will pursue all avenues that have long been ignored. Committee Republicans have uncovered evidence of federal crimes committed by and to the benefit of members of the president's family. These include conspiracy or defrauding the United States, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The Biden family's business dealings implicate a wide range of criminality, from human trafficking to potential violations of the Constitution. In the 118th Congress, this committee will evaluate the status of Joe Biden's relationship with his family's foreign partners and whether he is a president who is compromised or swayed by foreign dollars and influence. I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress. I now turn it over to Oversight Member and the next Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan.
Thank you, Jamie. So I would just start with this question. What part of Mr. Comer's presentation was Russian disinformation? I mean, never forget what happened on October 19th, 2020, 15 days before the most important election we have in our country. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? 15 days before that, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Clapper, and 49 other people signed a letter that said the following. It is for these reasons that we write to say that the arrival on the U.S. political scene of emails purportedly belonging to Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. They further went on to say, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails provided to the New York Post are genuine or not, just that our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. And of course, that letter became the pretext for suppressing this story, again, just days before the most important election we have in our country. So I would ask this, was J.P. Morgan's suspicious activity report to the Treasury Department, was that just a classic earmark of a Russian information operation? How about when Hunter Biden sent the email that Mr. Comer pointed to, sent the email asking for keys to his new office space, one for himself, one for President Biden, one for his uncle Jim Biden, and one for the emissary for the chairman of the Chinese energy company, CFCC. Was that just Russian disinformation operation in place? What part of Mr. Comer's presentation prompted the FBI to go to Facebook and say, hey, you want to be on the lookout for Russian misinformation here this election season? What part of his presentation would prompt that? And I think it's also important to understand, never forget how this story has changed. I mean, think about this. When it started off, it was, no, it's not his laptop. It's not his laptop. Then it was, well, it's his laptop, but remember, it's Russian disinformation and no one did anything wrong. Then it was, well, maybe he did something wrong, but President Biden didn't know about it. And now it's, well, maybe President Biden knew about it and was involved, but it didn't influence his decisions. In fact, yesterday, there was a story in Politico which said that. The story in Politico yesterday, investigating the investigators, dim strategists to launch counterpunch to House GOP. Story in Politico yesterday, here's what I said in there, quote, no evidence has publicly emerged that Joe Biden's decisions were affected by his son's business dealings. Wow, we've went from it wasn't his laptop and it was Russian disinformation to, oh, whatever was in there didn't affect the president's business dealings, even though he was involved, even though the laptop was real, even though it wasn't disinformation. That's how far we've come. So I think I think there are all kinds of questions that need to be answered, and we're determined to get there. Here's some of them that I have. Did the FBI brief Twitter as well? We know they briefed Facebook. We know that had an impact on the election. There's been surveys done where thousands and thousands of voters across this country said it might have impacted their decision in the election in 2020. Did the FBI brief any of the 51 former intelligence officials who signed that letter? Again, that letter that became the pretext for suppressing this story. Who did the briefings? Who briefed Facebook? Here's a name that I think is interesting. Timothy Thibault. So Mr. Thibault, now remember, we just did a report 2 weeks ago, Judiciary Committee, a report that talked about the political influence and the political shenanigans going on in our Justice Department based on 14 FBI agents who've come talk to our office as whistleblowers. One of those agents said, and this is the term he used, he said, at the highest levels of the FBI, specifically the Washington field office, he said it's rotted to the core. Not talking about rank and file agents. They're doing good work. Talking about the top people at the Washington field office. We had another whistleblower who brought up the name Mr. Thibault and said Mr. Thibault is pressuring agents to catalog and categorize cases in a specific way to satisfy this narrative about domestic violence extremism. But what's interesting is a different whistleblower, one who didn't come to our office, a different whistleblower who went to Senator Grassley's office, said that Mr. Thibault, by the way, the head of the special agent in charge at the Washington field office, Mr. Thibault is also the guy who suppressed information about the Hunter Biden story in October of 2020. I'd like to talk to Mr. Thibault. In fact, we've asked to talk to Mr. Thibault, even though he said publicly, I welcome a chance to answer questions. He's refused to come in and talk to us. That's someone we need to talk to. Why has the Biden administration suddenly changed their position on suspicious activity reports? Used to be, Mr. Comer wanted to see him. Any member of Congress, any chairman wanted to see him, any ranking member wanted to see him, any member of Congress, any committee, you got a chance to see him. Suddenly, no, we can't see him. I think Mr. Comer and our team at the Oversight Committee would kind of like to see the other 148. They've seen 2. They'd like to see the other 148. So We're committed to getting to the truth, the facts. We think that's what the American people are entitled to. We're gonna try to help Representative Comer and the team here at Oversight with our work on judiciary, but with a specific focus on what the FBI was doing. We know these 51 former intel officials, they got security clearance. How often are they talking to the FBI? Are they talking to the FBI? Who's doing the talking? Who's doing the briefing? Were they briefed? There's so many questions that need answered so we can get to the bottom of this. And the final thing I would say is this. A colleague of mine said this in a committee hearing a few weeks ago, Mr. Gates. He said, when is the FBI going to quit interfering with elections? 2016, they spied on President Trump's campaign. 2018, it was the Mueller investigation. 2020, they suppressed information about the Hunter Biden story. 2022, they raided the president's home 91 days before an election. Maybe it'd be nice if the FBI and the Justice Department just stayed out of it and let we the people decide who we think should represent us, who we think should lead us. That's supposed to be how America works. So this is the focus on the Judiciary Committee, the political nature at the Justice Department, and the linkage now to what was happening with the Hunter Biden story. Again, just 15 days before we have a presidential election.
We'll be happy to answer questions. Anyone on the committee will be happy to answer questions if you. Yes, sir.
Are you also putting the FBI on notice for not bringing, and the Department of Justice on notice for not bringing any charges?
And let me be very clear. Jim said this, but Jim's going to answer that question. The Oversight Committee, we are focused on the bank records moving forward. The Judiciary Committee is going to be focused on that, and Jim's going to answer that question.
No, we're not putting anybody on notice. We just want to get the truth. I mean, that's why we issued a 1,000-page report 2 weeks ago that talked about. So I've been in Congress a few years now. I've never seen anything like it. 14 agents come talk to us while we're in the minority about how political that place has become. Talking about the purging going. These are terms they use, not we. The purging going on, purging of agents, the pressure to categorize cases in a political fashion. The putting the threat tag label on moms and dads who show up at school board meetings. We know of over 24 parents who were investigated, no one charged. But think of the chilling impact that has. You show up at some parent's home, you talk to him because she's in the group Moms for Liberty, as an example. You talk to him. Think of the chilling impact that has on other parents. So that's what we're interested in getting to the bottom of. And the only way you can hold people accountable and hopefully stop the behavior is to present it to the country. That's what we got to do. So we're committed to doing it in an aggressive fashion, but in a way that's consistent with the Constitution.
Thank you. We know that the Department of Justice and FBI has been investigating Hunter Biden since 2018. How do you know that these claims that you are laying out in your remarks today and some of the examples that you have up here aren't claims that have already been fully investigated by those federal prosecutors?
Maybe they had. We don't know.
And can I follow up with the map that you were referring to? When was that PowerPoint from?
That PowerPoint was from what year? Do we know exactly? I think it's in your packet, but 2017.
So my follow-up there is, if this is from 2017, what is the connection to, the current energy crisis now? If that was years ago.
Are you real? I mean, Joe Biden says he's going to stand up to China. Joe Biden says he's going to rewrite our whole energy policy, America first. And he was a 10% equity owner in a company whose sole mission was to purchase liquefied natural gas from the United States and try to take over the natural gas industry in America through natural gas wholesalers and natural gas drillers. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden's been honest to the American people about that. And I think that's a question you all need to ask at the next White House press conference. We didn't know about your involvement in a Chinese energy company. Does that in any way, shape, or form impact your energy policy? And that's something that I think every American deserves answers to, especially at a time when we're faced with record high energy prices because of Biden's energy policy. Yes.
Will your committee call Hunter Biden or anybody in the Biden family to testify in an investigation, Secretary?
Yeah, we would love to talk to people in the Biden family, specifically Hunter and Jim Biden. I think the most important thing for us right now is to get those bank records. I mean, we have 2 suspicious activity reports in hand now, not because of the Biden family and certainly not because of Janet Yellen at Treasury. These suspicious activity reports are very detailed. And these aren't from little banks like in my part of Kentucky. These are Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. So these suspicious activity reports, and I don't think from day one, a lot of people in the media understand what a suspicious activity report is.
And so this continues, and so will we. Someone pointed out that we will very likely not see much of this on your evening news. You will see it on the Wells Report. That's because we're interested in the news. The politics, I'm so sick of politics I could puke in the trash can behind me, but on the other end of it, there are things that have to be reported. And I will report them. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Stand by. More of this press conference coming up on the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to point out that what we are seeing here are politicians making allegations. None of this is true until pronounced so in a court of law. Need to keep that in mind. I wasn't going to put up with it when they were trying to take out President Trump, and I'm not going to put up with politicians trying to take out President Biden unless they have truth. The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop. They had all this information. Terry Bobolinsky presented all of the information you're seeing to the FBI. They did nothing with it. Now it's in the hands of politicians. That is a failure of the FBI. Is it politically motivated? Jim Jordan is going to find out. All we can do is present the news as it lies on the table, and that is what we're doing. We'll continue with the press conference now. Republicans earlier today making serious allegations against the President of the United States.
Just so you know, suspicious activity reports were created after September the 11th as a way for the government to be able to track foreign transactions into American terror cells. Over time, it's expanded to include things like money laundering and other types of criminal activity. Because when in September 11th, remember, the banks knew that these terrorists were getting wire transfers from Saudi Arabia, but the FBI and the federal authorities didn't. So that was how these were created. Under President Bush, under President Obama, and under President Trump, any committee in Congress could have access to those suspicious activity reports. But when Joe Biden became president, he changed the rules. Now, does anyone here doubt my suspicion that he changed the rules because his son and possibly himself had 150 suspicious activity reports? Are we the only ones that find that odd that Joe Biden would change the rules when he became president? In fact, Maxine Waters had legislation to change the rules back. She didn't know why he changed the rules. And she had a bill, and part of the language in the bill was to override that rule and give Congress the access to those suspicious activity reports again. I actually voted for Maxine Waters' bill because that was in there, and I don't vote for a lot of Maxine Waters' bills. So, yes.
Thanks, Congressman, for doing this. A question for both of you. I'm wondering if you might be able to confirm that your committees will be investigating Speaker Pelosi and the Department of Justice for their treatment of defendants jailed in connection with January 6th, a promise that potentially Speaker McCarthy made to the House Freedom Caucus earlier this week.
He's the Department of Justice guy.
We're focused on, you saw our report. Well, maybe you didn't. I hope if you didn't, you take time to read it. We're focused on how political our Justice Department has become. It's not a question of if they are political, if they are. They're making decisions on a political basis. We're going to look at all that.
See, and the treatment of
We're looking at
January 6th
We're looking
defendants
at
specifically.
umbrella of political operations at the Justice Department, all the way back to the very first whistleblower came to us over a year ago. About a year ago, I should say, regarding the school boards issue. So we're concerned about anything that is being done in a political fashion at the Justice Department, because remember, you got to step back. It's supposed to be, in this great country, the greatest country ever, it's supposed to be equal treatment under the law. And when you have a Justice Department that's not following that fundamental principle, I think that sets our country apart from all others, that is a major problem.
Do you think the January 6th insurrectionists have been wrongly imprisoned?
I didn't say anything. All I said is we're going to look at the politics at the Justice Department based on the fact that we have had 14 different, actually more than 14 now, whistleblowers come talk to us. That's what we're going to focus on.
My last question is just, what are the grounds
If we can keep it about Hunter Biden, this is kind of a big deal, we think. If we can keep it about Hunter Biden, that would be great.
Some
Yeah, go.
I just wanted to piggyback. She said that for January 6th, just what you're planning to do with the January 6th investigation. It seems like you guys
I think
also
that's a
have
question.
for the FBI.
I think that's a question for Kevin McCarthy. That we're focused on a lot of investigations now. I've been very transparent with the media on it. That wasn't one of them, but yes.
Okay, so can you kind of preview how this is going to play out? So it sounds like your focus initially is going to be on these suspicious activity reports, which you endeavor to receive somehow. Is that going to be through potentially subpoenaing a bank? And then once you receive those, are you expecting a smoking gun from that, or is that going to lead to more avenues? And then finally, what deliverable are you expecting? Another report? Or is this do you see this terminating in some sort of referral? How do you see this playing out?
Well, obviously, with the two that we already have, they've opened.
How did you get those?
Well, we can't reveal our sources, but the two are on the internet, so you can dig and find them. They're out there, but we verified they're 100% factual.
And I'm not questioning that,
Right.
but if you got that from an individual, why would that individual have two?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. Because again, I don't think a lot of people in the media and in Congress, for that matter, understand a suspicious activity report. Byron Donalds does. He's a financial expert. I've had the honor of being on a bank board. When you get a suspicious activity report, it flags every account that's had a transaction within a certain time period. Am I right, Bob? So the suspicious activity report that we have shows where Hunter Biden purchased whatever with an escort service. The escort service then paid the prostitute, and then the bank implies that the escort service is under suspicion for human trafficking. We see where the escort service is from, the prostitute from. She's not from the United States. Again, I don't want this to be about the the prostitute. Here's the thing: Hunter Biden isn't this innocent guy that just got a bad rap because he had a drug problem.
This is the Wells Report. We're going to continue this into the next hour. So this is from earlier today. The Republicans promising investigations into Hunter Biden and the President of the United States making serious allegations. We'll finish this next hour on the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Remember, this is just political stuff now. Until a court of law rules, it's political. Back in a moment. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news honestly, truthfully, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, and I hope you stick around for the commentary regarding what we've been doing on this broadcast for the last hour or so. That takes us back to the previous hour. Make sure you stick with this, because I do have some comments that are, in my view, in my opinion, important that you need to hear. Remember, this is not a partisan broadcast. This is a news broadcast, and we are reporting the news. The Republicans had a press conference today where they made serious allegations against the President of the United States, including federal felonies such as fraud and wire fraud, and on and on. These are very serious allegations. We are covering the story. Let's get back to the press conference. If you missed the first part of this press conference, go back to the previous hour on the Wells Report and watch them. If not, go to C-SPAN and watch the whole thing. Encourage your friends to do so, of both political parties. It is essential that we, the people of the United States, pay close attention to what's happening here. This is historic. This is something that people will be reading about for 100 years. Now, once again, these are simply allegations. Until a court of law acts, this is essentially a grand jury presentation. And I'll save those comments for later. Let's get back to the press conference earlier today. This from C-SPAN. We thank them very much for their cooperation in allowing us to bring this to you. Let's move on.
And the Republicans don't need to waste any time on Hunter Biden. We're not trying to prove Hunter Biden is a bad actor. He is. If anybody wants to disagree with that, then there's nothing we have to talk about. Our investigation is about Joe Biden. And we already have evidence that would point that Joe Biden was involved with Hunter Biden on his deal. So we want the bank records, and that's our focus. We're trying to stay focused on, was Joe Biden directly involved with Hunter Biden's business deals, and is he compromised? That's our investigation.
And so if you found that through the reports, what would be your deliverable? Another report, or would you refer those charges, or do you foresee this resulting in some sort of impeachment?
We will issue a report. We will hand over any potential criminal activity to the appropriate authorities, and that's what we do. We investigate.
No, we're a legislative body, so the liberals, we may need to change the disclosure laws. We may need to look at this investigation started because of the concern with big tech, FBI talking to big tech suppressing, throttling back information that we, the people, should have had access to when we're getting ready to make the most important decision we make as a country on who's going to lead us. That's where this starts. So do we need to change Section 230? It's all about the legislative purposes. Supreme Court's been clear. That's where we got to focus. And I would just argue fundamentally it's about the First Amendment, that the idea that they were suppressing critical information that the country should have had access to. And they did it literally 15 days before. And do you tell me what in the report that Mr. Comer and the team has put together is Russian disinformation? That was all BS, and everyone knows it was BS, and frankly should have known it at the time, and I think did know it at the time but did it anyway. So that's the legislative purpose that we got to get to. So, but we don't know where that's going to go. That's what we're trying to do.
Mr. Comer. Yeah, some Republicans have questioned the timing of this. Why make this your very first visible order of business, investigating President Biden and his family?
If you look at the Commitment to America, there were 4 tenets of that. The fourth was to hold this administration accountable. That's the job of the Oversight Committee. I know some in the media have said, well, this is what the Republicans, their whole sole focus is. This is the focus of the Oversight Committee. Now, I know Kevin said the first legislation we're going to vote on is to repeal the 87,000 IRS agents, to reduce the size of government, because that's tackling inflation. We have inflation because the Democrats have spent too much money. So we have a legislative agenda, and we're focused on a lot of things in Congress. But from the Oversight Committee, we're in charge of investigations. We feel that this is of the utmost importance.
And to follow Do you expect cooperation from the Biden administration and when it comes to the Justice Department, which is also investigating Hunter Biden? If the DOJ doesn't cooperate, what means do you have at your disposal right now to get the information that they've uncovered on him?
So just on cooperation, well, first, they haven't responded to any of the correspondence, any of the letters, any of the inquiries that came from Ranking Member Comer. Second, they changed the suspicious activity report process and protocol. And third, they've now set up a committee, according to reporter, I don't know, maybe they're in this room, the report in Politico that said, oh, they set up a committee to attack us and to come after us. So I don't know, you guess. They're probably not gonna work with this too well, because they certainly haven't. They've done things that really are unprecedented, changing the SARS and setting up I mean, that's pretty unprecedented.
Should
Can I just
President
follow up on
Biden
SARS?
be forced to come and testify on Capitol Hill?
I would say one other thing. One of the most important things we can, I guess I've said it a couple times, one of the most important things we can do is do the work that needs to be done so that we can hopefully have a Justice Department that doesn't operate in a political fashion. That's my focus. I think it's everyone's focus. So I think that's pretty darn important to the American people.
A quick follow-up question on that particular point. There's Maine Justice, and then there's Mr. Weiss in Delaware, who, as you know, was appointed by President Trump and initiated this investigation under the previous administration. Just generally, because some of these suggestions that have been made in terms of the investigation moving towards President Biden have not apparently, we haven't uncovered any evidence that that is currently being discussed in front of the grand jury in Delaware or in that particular office. Do you have confidence? Forget the larger question of the Biden Justice Department. Do you have confidence that Mr. Weiss is doing a thorough job in his investigation?
All I'm going to say is there shouldn't be politics anywhere. It should be driven by the facts, the law, the Constitution. We've had over 14 whistleblowers come talk to us. Every single one has said at the highest levels of the Justice Department here in D.C., the Washington field office and the Justice Department here in D.C., that is where the politics are involved. That is where the political decisions are being made. We have a concern with that. That's what we're focused on.
Just to quickly follow on my follow-up, do you have any reason to believe that Maine Justice is attempting to influence the investigation?
All I know is what the whistleblowers have told our office. That's what we're focused on.
And I'll wrap it up with this. We'll all be available throughout the day for questions. I realize that congressional oversight doesn't have a lot of credibility in Washington. I blame Adam Schiff for that. We're going to change that. We're not going to talk about anything unless we have evidence. And that's how I started this out. You're going to be presented with something you haven't been used to over the past 4 years, evidence. And we believe that this is of the utmost importance. I've been watching the panels on CNN, everywhere else, where they say, oh, why are Republicans investigating Hunter Biden? Why are we wasting time doing this? This is an investigation of Joe Biden. I think we've laid out the evidence as to why we feel it's important. And we're going to move forward with that. We're going to do a lot of investigations. We're going to do a lot of probing. We're focused on waste, fraud, and abuse. There's no shortage of that in this federal government. Let me assure you that. And that's going to be a priority for this committee. Every member of this committee is going to have priorities in areas where they're focused on in the next Congress. And we're going to try to restore credibility to congressional investigations, and we're going to try to get the backs of the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are the one that's taking it on the chin. Catherine, I'll end with you.
What do you make of the fact that the U.S. Attorney in Delaware has been investigating Hunter Biden and his financial activities for 4 years, and yet no charges have been brought?
I'll say that, and then Jim can end with that. Look, the more you look into Hunter Biden, the more bad things pop up. I don't know if that's the situation. I don't know if he's getting resistance at the Department of Justice. From what I've heard, they're looking into the tax evasion. There's no question he's evaded taxes. That's why he got the Hollywood lawyer to loan him $2 million to try to get caught up with the IRS on his tax bill. But at the end of the day, we're focused on some things that I think every American needs answers to. And one thing that I've learned from talking to a lot of you off the scene here is that I don't think a lot of people realize the evidence that's already out there pertaining to Hunter Biden. And I don't think anybody realized that Joe Biden is in fact involved in a lot of these. He was in fact involved in a lot of these. So the goal from this press conference is to show you, number one, this is an investigation of Joe Biden. We're focused on the bank records. We're very specifically focused on the bank records and the bank violations bank violation. And remember, Congress used to have access to the bank violations until Joe Biden changed the rules, which that in itself should be a front page story above the fold. I'm not telling you what to do, but that's pretty odd that he would change the rules to do that. And we laid out why we think it's important. So Jim can follow up. Let's go.
I'm good.
Thank you.
And so there you have it. That was earlier today. We want to thank C-SPAN for giving us this video. It is available on YouTube, although there are audio difficulties with that particular tape. And this was the Republican Oversight Committee and Judiciary Committee, incoming chairman of both of those committees, making explosive and very serious allegations against the President of the United States. They involve crimes that are federal. They are felonies. They are crimes that are international in scope. And there are things that we are dealing with here that are not being dealt with and have not been dealt with. Indeed, there seems to be even evasion by the Biden administration based on these allegations. There seems to be evasion as to what kind of information is available to the Congress that should be available to the Congress based on the Patriot Act. All of this was brought up. Also, I want to say something else. Jim Jordan said something that I am going to pay very, very close attention to and watch like a hawk. The proceedings of both the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee, he said, would comport with the Constitution of the United States. That means due process of law, due process, which means the Biden administration has the right to confront their accusers, and they should, and hopefully they will. What they have not done at this particular time is shown much interest in doing any of that. Now, they haven't been forced to. And so what I would suspect is that there will be some very interesting information in the coming days coming from the White House regarding these allegations. Most likely it will be, they will say this is just a political hit job, what have you. But this information was presented to the FBI. They did nothing with it. The FBI has had Hunter Biden's laptop. They did nothing with it. The Delaware U.S. attorney may be indeed investigating Hunter Biden. Now, I know that Hunter Biden has gone ahead and was at least given an opportunity to accept a plea bargain on some of those charges. Will he move forward with any of that? I don't know. As was pointed out, the Oversight Committee doesn't have a very good public reputation at this particular moment based on politics of the past. And all we can say is that the Department of Justice is blatantly political, as is the FBI. There are a lot of other rubrics. There are other details that have to be brought out in this particular thing. This is part of the analysis. But I'm very interested in what you have to say on what you've heard so far on this edition of the Wells Report. Call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172. I'll answer any questions I possibly can. I know what you know, but if you have questions beyond that, I'd love to hear from you. You can also put that on a chat room, and I'll be more than happy to work that through as well. You're watching the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do? We report the news. Back with more of that coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Sorry it took so long for me to get back. I had a technical break that I had to take care of. Anyway, so I remember earlier this morning, I was going to get my hair cut, and I heard this press conference live, and I was shocked by a lot of the things I heard. I leavened all of that with the knowledge and the editorial decision-making that I've made on this broadcast, which was to report the news. And while I do opine, I make sure you know the difference between what I'm reporting and what I think about it. It's essential. And just because I think something doesn't make it right. It just makes it my opinion, just as valuable as yours. What have you just seen? What have you heard when it comes to these stark allegations of federal crime levied against the President of the United States? What did you hear? There are a lot of different details that came up during this that I want to touch on, and I'll do that in the next half hour. Because this is a short segment, and I want to give them a little bit more due. What I do want to point out is the following. The Democrat Party has brought this on itself. I suspect that one of the major reasons that Nancy Pelosi is stepping aside has to do with the fact that she saw this coming. It was something that they fought very, very hard. I'm talking about Democrats. They fought very, very hard to reduce the amount of strength the Republican Party would have following this election. They were successful as far as the Senate is concerned, but not as successful regarding the House of Representatives. This will limit what goes on with regard to the outcome of all of this. But there are things that need to be discussed. There are things that need to be said. The DOJ is a political organization. The FBI is a political organization. The IRS, the Department of Homeland Security, all of these agencies are implicated in all of these political machinations. It is something that you hear an awful lot that somebody will say, well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Well, it's possible. It's possible. But I can say one last thing. If these things are true, there will be stark implications on the continued presidency of Joe Biden. If indeed this causes a change in the country's leadership, make no mistake, this will be damaging to all of us and our nation. It is not something to be taken lightly, and it is certainly not something that should be acted on based on political ideologies and the realm of politics. What will happen when the Republicans finish up their investigations? What will happen then? They will make referrals. What will happen to those referrals? It is not so necessary that what is already known as a political FBI and political DOJ, it's not necessary for them to do something about it, because the true jury in the United States, and one of the things that makes us the greatest country on earth, is that we, the people, are the final judge of all of this. Put your politics aside. Be objective. Be straightforward. Be fair. Because that's what we're going to do here on the Wells Report. Back with more in just a couple of moments. Thanks very much for being with us. I'll see you in just a second. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Very serious allegations against the President of the United States made by Republicans earlier today as a part of the House Judiciary Committee and the House Oversight Committee. We are going to follow this story just as we have the other stories. And someone's already saying, well, wait a minute, you didn't cover the January 6th committee. I didn't cover the January 6th committee because it ignored the Constitution of the United States. There needed to be the other side of the discussion. That wasn't just my opinion. It was also the opinion of, who would have ever thought, Gerald Nadler, who was sitting on that committee. He said the president has to be able to defend himself, or this will have no credibility. They refused. There was no credibility. That doesn't make it news. That makes it political ravings. Now, you say, well, what about this? Are these political ravings? Okay, probably, but probably not as well. There are problems regarding this interaction of the Biden family with many other countries. And there seem to be outright provable and indeed public information that points to at least influence purchasing. Now, given the international nature of all this, that makes it a national security issue. The circumstances surrounding President Trump, even though he was accused also of international crimes, as we come to this conversation, all of those crimes were essentially, for want of a better word, debunked. Now, this is early. We're not going to try this case, and neither will the Republicans, in a court of law. And as I've pointed out several times today, until a court of law pronounces a verdict on what these things are, what we have here are allegations. That being said, again, I pointed this out last segment. The Democrats brought this on themselves. Nancy Pelosi said famously, the seriousness of the allegations themselves should be enough for judgment. That was chilling to me. You can say anything you want, but there is evidence to back this up. And to be perfectly honest with you, as I move to the opinion camera, when I saw that PowerPoint presentation slide regarding the possible purchase of American energy interests by China, and that entire slide was in Chinese, that changed things for me. That was stark and chilling, especially when you consider the president immediately curtailing energy production in the United States, just in time for a winter where that energy is going to be needed to warm Americans. These are very, very serious things. Now, we've heard from the Republicans. You've heard a little bit from me, more about that coming up in just a moment. But I want to hear from you. 817-379-2172 if you care to call. Otherwise, the chat room is open. Max said, remember, innocent until proven guilty, but so much of this has been swept under the rug with the assistance of the FBI and other agencies. Still, allegations have hurt many people. True. And I'm making it absolutely clear that I'm not going to run away with allegations. There are a lot of people that do that. There are a lot of people that say, well, this is all true and this and that and such and so. Well, that may be the case, but we don't know yet. And we're not going to watch a railroading of a president of the United States without due process and, in the words of Jim Jordan, constitutional considerations given to all parties. That did not happen in the January 6th committee. So let's see. Got to go putting in my steps, said Alicia. Sorry she missed that. I doubt that the president will cooperate. That may be. Jesse says that, but the thing about this is the president is going to have to at least and in some level address this. They're going to try the political angle first. This is just Republican vindication or some vindictive ploy on the part of Republicans. The only thing I can say on that is that all this information has been presented to the FBI. They've done nothing with it. This is going to hurt them. And if indeed this reaches into a willingness to set aside the suspicious incident reports of banking and so on, then we have a cover-up. And we took a president out of office based on a cover-up. And so, let's move on. I hope that the Republicans are going to actually help the taxpayers. We'll see. What we heard and saw, I asked what you heard and what you saw. What we heard and saw are things folks like us never knew or suspected, but have been suppressed by the left, justice, the FBI, and the media because to them it's win at all costs. Nothing else matters. And that is the sociopathic bent of the American left, in my view. The fact that he changed the rules regarding these suspicious incident reports should be a red flag. It is. If the House conducts these investigations, this is a great question from Poker Monkey. If the House conducts these investigations, who do they refer to? The Department of Justice? Merrick Garland? The FBI? It will all disappear into the abyss. Who prosecutes the prosecutors? We, the people of the United States. We, the people of the United States. It's been said many, many times in political circles and elsewhere that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Sunlight is indeed what is necessary here. The Judiciary Committee will chase down the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice. They will chase this down. At least they say they will. But I was worried about this at the outset. I was worried about this. And the reason was, and I pointed this out several times, in the past several years, we have watched what appear to be incredibly huge crimes. And I pointed out that are these crimes too big to prosecute? And if so, how do we handle them? And once again, I came back to the American people. The American people need to know about this. They need to know what has been going on in their name. And by the way, this takes us back to big tech. It has been demonstrated that they have indeed suppressed all of this news. Facebook, at the urging of the FBI, to suppress this news. This is huge. And I don't say that very often unless it's huge. And this is. Poker went on to say, January 6th, President Trump held a rally, said to the people, we will now march to the Capitol and peacefully and patriotically let them hear our voices. That's what he said. That was all swept aside by the January 6th committee. He then moves on to say, the end. Well, not exactly. All we have is allegations. All we have now, allegations. Biden and son, the FBI, the Department of Justice make Watergate look like tiddlywinks. Well, lying to the FISA court in order to obtain warrants to eavesdrop on President Trump's campaign workers and thus have a spreadsheet by a famous spreadsheet by Susan Rice, keeping track of all of these operatives for the Trump campaign, up to and including where they're having lunch. That stopped me in my tracks. There's also something else that has to be pointed out here. The Patriot Act made all of this possible. Every bit of it. When the Patriot Act was passed at the end after the 9/11 attacks, I said, I'm concerned about this law. I understand we have to do something. But this law was designed to keep tabs on international terrorists. Since this law has been in force, it's been used to chase down county commissions. It's been used to eavesdrop on people around the nation for political purposes. Once again, this is not an allegation. This is fact. This is news. The FBI, talking to all these other international intelligence agencies of the United States, the NSA and the CIA, those walls were broken down. And then, during the Obama administration, they were politicized. All of these agencies politicized. The IRS, the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Election Commission. All of these agencies started playing politics. And that is not their job, and that is not what they should do. Another stinging indictment, not spoken by the Republicans today, have to do, or lightly touched on, has to do with the fact the mainstream media has suppressed this story as well. The free press of the United States is essential to the freedoms and liberties we enjoy. A free press that operates in the interests of a particular political party, it makes no difference which one. Applying the salve of comfort to people who can't believe what they're hearing, that is not doing anyone a service. It's why I do the Wells Report. Because somebody has to do something. And I decided that whoever that person was had to be willing to tell the truth. I never thought that telling the truth would be so controversial. But the intervening 21 years has proven otherwise. I made a lot of enemies. I have done a lot of things that with this broadcast that did indeed create changes in the way our government is handled and the way people in that government operate. That was not my aim. My aim was to report the news. And so, in absence of the mainstream media doing it, I said to myself, once again, that person that tells the truth, that reports the news, and does all of those things, must do so for the right reasons. He also has to be crazy as hell. I happen to fit both categories, and here we are. Let's get back to, if you're just joining us, the Republicans made some incredible allegations against the President of the United States. As reported by Fox News earlier, Republican Representatives James Comer and Jim Jordan alleged at a press conference today President Biden was actively involved in overseas business dealings alongside his son, Hunter. James Comer, citing whistleblowers, asserted the Biden family, quote, flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Was Joe Biden directly involved with Hunter Biden's business deals, and is he compromised? That is our investigation. Comer is the incoming chair of the House Oversight Committee. Jordan is expected to soon chair the Judiciary Committee. The representatives allege Hunter Biden and Joe Biden participated in waste, fraud, and abuse in international business dealings. The Republicans say they have uncovered evidence of a conspiracy to defraud the United States, wire fraud, violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, money laundering, tax evasion, and other crimes. During the press conference, Comer said he believed the Oversight Committee has lost much of its credibility in the recent years, which he blamed on California Representative Adam Schiff. And so that is the state of play, where we find it now. Now, where will this go? Well, I would suspect that where it goes is essentially going to descend to a political outcome, and that saddens me. I wish the FBI had done its job. I wish the Department of Justice would have done its job. Much of this occurred during the Obama administration when Joe Biden was vice president. If the FBI had done its job, would there be a Biden administration? The answer is very likely no. But because they did not do their job, we have, as alleged by the Republican Party, a criminal president of the United States. And so, where do we go from here? A few more thoughts as we continue here on the Wells Report. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can join us on the chat room. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Somebody asked, is any of this, if true, treasonous? Treason is one of those laws in the United States that depend greatly on intent. It is not my belief that even if these allegations are true, that any of them have to do with the need or the desire to damage the United States as a nation. In my view, this is about chasing money. This is about attempting to enrich themselves. If all of this is true, and we don't know that's the case. This is powerful evidence. They have powerful evidence. And the FBI, as I said moments ago, failing to do their jobs when Joe Biden was a vice president, led to where we are now. I decried the political use of the FBI long, long ago. Even President Obama took President Biden aside when he was the vice president of the United States and said, knock it off. President Biden was correct. Did he know all this was happening? Yes. Is he complicit insofar as he refused to formally endorse President Biden until nearly the end of the 2020 election season? Maybe now we know why. President Biden is also famously known for saying, never underestimate the ability of Joe Biden to F things up. These are all things that were swept under the rug for the sake of politics. Not just by the Democrat Party, but in some quarters, the Republican Party, and certainly the mainstream media. We've been failed by all of those institutions. We've been failed by our political servants. We've been failed by our mainstream media. This broadcast only exists because of those failures. I'm doing all I can, but I have a small voice. This broadcast has a very small footprint. I'm doing my best to try to grow it. Because what I bring to this is, and this is not patting myself on the back. That's not the case. This has nothing to do with me. This has to do with us. It's always been that way on the Wells Report. I said famously, this is our show. This one belongs to us. This is where we get to have the discussions that we don't get to sit in on in Washington, D.C. This is about the American people. It's not because I'm any different than anybody else. It's because I have the will to sit here every day and for 20 people, 25 people, tell the truth. These broadcasts are in the public domain. They will be available should anybody care to go back and look at any of them. It is a body of work that I am very proud of. Again, not because I'm expecting something from this. I'm not. I gave up on that notion a long time ago when I worked for a couple of years doing the Wells Report with no paycheck, which I'm doing now, by the way. I'm doing it because it must be done. I've said on this broadcast several times that the toughest part about doing this job is not necessarily getting things wrong. Sometimes the toughest part of this job is getting things right. Because it hurts me. It hurts me that we have a president that these allegations can be made of. It hurts me that there are people out here that would use the American people and their faith and their votes as nothing more than a way to make money. For money? If you're elected to any seat in the United States, and most certainly the presidency, the act of faith between you and the people you are the president of should blow all of that away. And I'm sad that it doesn't. I'm sad that it hasn't. We must remember that these are allegations. We must remember that there is due process. We must remember that even though a president that we may have voted for was not offered any of these protections by the Constitution of the United States, there is a time when you have to stand for that document. This broadcast does. It always has. It will also call to the people that serve us to do the very same. I was very, very glad to hear Jim Jordan say those very words today. If he does not do that, he will be hearing from me on this broadcast and other ways as well. Emails, telephone calls. But I will not stand silent and allow evil to flourish and triumph. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Share this broadcast with your friends, especially this one. See you tomorrow. Okay. I got to be honest. This one hurt. Ow. All right. What else do we have here? Good night, Yvonne. Thank you very much. Divide and conquer. That's what both sides are doing. We must stand true and strong. Stand true and strong. John said something that was very nice. JD, you're not crazy. Well, maybe just a little, like all of us. You're a patriot concerned with the direction of the country. That is correct. That's all there is. I have a wonderful, beautiful life. I've been gifted with all kinds of things. I just can't stand by and let this happen. Whether it serves the political whims of the people of the United States or some people of the United States or not. I just can't stand by and not let fairness and truth reign. Unfortunately, I got this broadcast. I hope you enjoyed it today. You be safe. By the way, before I go, if you're in the neighborhood, I'll be playing tonight with the traditional blues band. I'll be playing drums at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas. Please come and see us for two reasons. If you love the blues, this is great. I get to play with recording stars. Not that I belong playing with these recording stars, but I have recorded once or twice. All I can say is that I'm very fortunate to be able to play with these guys. And if you like the blues, you're going to hear some real blues tonight. Well, except for the drumming. And I fake it well. But anyway, the Dream Tacos in Bedford, and we'll see you tonight. Bring your friends, and that's the one reason is because of that. The other reason is because we're trying to hang on to this gig. And the more people show up, the more chance we have to hold on to it. Okay? All right. God bless all y'all. I'll see you later tonight and definitely tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed the show.